Hey everyone, this is Jason Romano from Sports Spectrum. Today's interview with Katie Engleson was pre-recorded and took place prior to the coronavirus outbreak. So obviously in this conversation, we do not talk about that, but we pray that you are encouraged by hearing Katie's story. We also pray for all of you out there, however you've been affected by this virus and this outbreak, and obviously everyone's been affected in some way or another. But we're praying for you all and believe that God is in control. God has it covered. He still has a plan, and he's bigger than any outbreak or any virus because he's God, and we put our faith and trust in him and Jesus, his son, today. Take a listen to our conversation with Katie Engleson, pre-recorded here on Sports Spectrum.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, everyone. I'm Jason Romano. So great to have you joining us here today on our broadcast. Katie Engleson is our guest today here on Sports Spectrum. She is a reporter with Fox Sports Southwest. She covers a bunch of different teams, including the Mavericks, the Pelicans, the Texas Rangers. She's a sideline reporter for the WNBA's Dallas Wings. She covers high school football in Texas, which if you don't know about high school football in Texas, it's kind of a big deal. Friday Night Lights, et cetera, et cetera. Katie Engleson's got a great story, and we're fortunate to have her share it here with us here on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen to our conversation with Fox Sports Southwest reporter Katie Engleson. Katie, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I absolutely love your podcast, so it's really cool to have this opportunity.
Thank you. We love the podcast, and we love the stories that we've been able to tell on it and all the interviews that we get to do with Sports Spectrum. And when I saw you kind of following you on social media and know where you stand as far as your faith goes, and certainly the world of sports, and that intersects well with what you do for a job. Let's talk about that job, your day-to-day. You're currently working, as I mentioned, with Fox Sports Southwest as a reporter, wearing a bunch of different hats. Can you tell us about that role and what it entails kind of day-to-day?
Sure. So I'm a reporter, as you mentioned, for Fox Sports Southwest, which is the regional network of Fox Sports here in Dallas. And I really do a little bit for each of our teams. A huge product of ours is high school football. So during football season, I'm traveling the state, flying to the biggest games. And that is so much fun. And then I'm also the sideline reporter for the Dallas Wings, which is our WNBA team here. And that season starts May, June, and goes until about September. So,
yeah.
And then I do some stuff like studio work for the Rangers. We have a report called the On the Farm Update. And so that is kind of keeping viewers up to date on what's going on in the minor league affiliates. And then I do some feature stories for our Mavs Insider show. And then also now I'll be doing some stuff with the Pelicans. So I'm super excited about that. And every day looks different for me, but I love it.
You mentioned high school football, and it's a different animal in Texas than it is in other areas of the country, especially up here in the Northeast. Not that football isn't important, but in Texas, it's a crazy lifestyle. It's a religion, a lot of people would say. Can you describe what that is like during the fall in Texas with high school football on a Friday night?
Sure. Oh my goodness. It's unreal. And you don't really know what it's like until you get to Texas and get to watch a game yourself. But I went to a football powerhouse, St. Thomas Aquinas. And so I kind of am familiar with just what high school football means to so many, because it was obviously such a big part of my life in high school.
Yeah.
But in Texas, it's a whole different story. I mean, these towns shut down just to be able to go watch their teams play on Friday night. It is so cool. And my favorite part, honestly, of this job so far has been the state championships, and those are at AT&T Stadium. It's a 4-day event, and it is just incredible. I mean, they say that sometimes for some of these games, the crowds are bigger than what's at a Cowboys game at times. So there's that many people that come out to watch, and it's really cool too to follow these players and their journeys and to see where they end up. A lot of them play, obviously in Division I schools, and then some of them are playing on Sundays. So it's really cool to see that. And it says a lot about the talent that Texas produces. So It's so much fun. I love it. And football is definitely king here in Texas.
When did the itch start to take shape for you to scratch to become a broadcaster, a media personality, a person that, covers sports for a living? When did that really start to kind of take shape for you?
Sure. So when I was 11 years old, when I was in 5th grade, I was on my school's morning announcements team, and we kind of did a variety of different jobs. Sometimes we'd be behind the camera, sometimes we'd be in front of it. We had like a weather forecast. And so I always wanted to be a broadcast journalist from that point because I loved it so much. I loved writing. I loved telling stories. And then when I went to college, I went to the University of Alabama. I had several different internships. The first one was actually a news internship because I didn't know if I wanted to go the news or the sports route. When it came to sports, I've always been a fan. My family, Sunday dinners after we'd watch Sunday Night Football. So that's kind of just something we did. Yeah. And I grew up around it. But I didn't know which direction I wanted to go to until I had a news internship, and I realized that I'm too emotional, and there was a situation where I almost passed out covering an event. So, I realized that was not the route for me. And there was an opening in sports, and I absolutely loved it. It's so much fun, and it did not feel like work. It still doesn't feel like work. It's when you love something so much and you get to do that every day, it's very exciting.
Well, it's part of the reason why I didn't want to go into the news world either. It's just because partially being emotional, but there's just so much out there, and so much of the news world, whether it's local news or national news, it doesn't cover the positive. There is often times where you get to do the positive stories, but it's so much about tragedy and illness and politics. I'm with you. I'm so glad, whatever it was, 25 years ago, that I chose not to go down that route and get to do sports. And you're right. It's like we get to be in the toy store of journalism, right? Where we get to have sports be a part of our journey every day. Tell me about when you got to Alabama and you said you started to do some internships and kind of really understand the broadcasting journey that you wanted to go on. You also were a baton twirler, right? And so what was that journey like, trying to figure out the major and go into broadcasting and also being a baton twirler?
Yes. So I grew up a competitive baton twirler and dancer my whole life. I actually played soccer and volleyball as well. But when I was 15, I really had to make a decision what I wanted to focus on. And so I chose the baton twirling and dance route. And ultimately it led me to become a University of Alabama Crimsonette. So it really worked out. Those were some of the best years of my life. But balance was really hard because as a Crimsonette during football season, we have practice every day for about 3 hours on average. And then we would have additional practices if we were learning new choreography or a new halftime show. So it was very hectic, but I wouldn't trade it for a thing, especially when I was there. My freshman year, we won a BCS national title, beat Notre Dame, and then we lost 2 Sugar Bowls in between. One of those was a semifinal game to Ohio State. But then my senior year, we beat Clemson in the national championship. So many great opportunities came out of that. And then as far as internships go, I interned with WVUA TV, which was our local TV affiliate. It was owned by the university, and they had some student reporters. And so I got to do that. That was so much fun. I started out in news, as I mentioned, and then went the sports route. And then I was a part of ESPN Campus Connection, which was incredible. And that provided me with a lot of good networking opportunities. And also, I got to shadow some of the talent whenever they would come into town. So I remember signing day one of my first things that I got to do was shadow Tom Rinaldi. And he took the time in between his hits for Sports Center and just the signing day special, whatever they had going on, to, sit down with me and answer any questions that I had. And then at the end, I put together a little mock report. So that was really cool. And he coached me the entire way through it. So forever thankful to him and that he took the time to do that, because that really means a lot. And then I also hosted a podcast type show, affiliated with the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com, which was with C. Stillhurt and Aaron Settles. And that was really interesting because it was every week during football season. It was at one of the local sports bars, sports restaurants. And I would have to leave Crimsonette practice early. I'm so thankful that my coach allowed me to do this. Would leave early, would change in the car, would get there, and then have to be ready to go on air. So it was really cool. And my opportunities at Alabama were very beneficial in terms of what I'm doing now.
You mentioned Tom Rinaldi. I love Tom, and he's great. Yeah. But you said that you're emotional, so you can't do the stories in the news. But he's like the one guy. Tom does these amazing stories on these amazing people, and every single time I watch it, I'm tearing up. So it just made me chuckle thinking you're around Tom Rinaldi, and there's no doubt that he's going to make all of us cry for something that he's working on, right?
Right. That's so funny. It's so true. I can't watch a story without crying. Like I'll even start crying before it even starts because I just know where it's going.
It's so true. Now explain for those listening, and maybe it's just for me because I'm not familiar with the sort of baton twirling world, what that is, what that entails. You're not, you're a Crimsonette. So that's part of the band? Forgive me. I don't know all that. So
sure. No, yeah, you're fine. So the Crimsonettes are part of the $1 Million Band. So we perform pregame and halftime, and then we're in the stands typically. I say we, like I'm still a Crimsonette.
Once a Crimsonette, always a Crimsonette, right?
Exactly. But then during the game, we're in the stands, and we have like routines that we do in the stands while the band's playing. So yes, we're a part of the $1 Million Band, and baton twirling is. It's its own world. My mom was a baton twirler, so that's honestly how I got into it. I really loved it. You know, we had batons around the house, and I would just, start twirling it. My sister was also a baton twirler as well, and then she was a Crimsonette for 1 year. I was there for all 4 years. But, so that was really cool to share that 1 year with her. But it's a different world. But a lot of what the Crimsonettes do, too, is more dance-based. But I would say that they're one of the most prestigious baton twirling teams, organizations in the country, especially, having the opportunity to twirl for the Alabama Crimson Tide and some of the opportunities that were there when I was there. I mean, it was truly a surreal experience.
It's nice to be around a team that is going to be competitive and winning pretty much every year, right?
Exactly, yeah.
What's a Saturday like in the fall in Tuscaloosa when you're getting ready for a football game? It's got to be such a unique experience.
It is. So typically we wake up, depending on game time, we'll have practice in the morning. Sometimes it's at 7 a.m., which means we have to be there by like 6:45, depending if it's, if it's an 11 a.m. kick or a 2:30. But if it's a night game, we'll have practice probably around noon. And then we have time to get some food, get ready. And then we do some pep rallies. We have something called Elephant Stomp, which is on the quad in front of Gorgas Library, and then it's right near the stadium. And then from there, we'll head over to the stadium and get ready for pregame and the game. So it's so much fun. There's so much tradition that comes with it, and it's really cool to have been a part of it. I mean, I would see videos of the Crimsonettes all the time, watching football, and then to actually be in that uniform and be twirling and performing at a national title game. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
We'll get back to our conversation with Katie Engleson in just a moment, but want to take a second to tell you about our Sports Spectrum magazine. It's been around for 30 plus years, and this ministry, Sports Spectrum, was founded. The idea of telling stories of sports and faith was founded back in 1985 with the very first Sports Spectrum magazine. Dr. J. Julius Irving was on the cover of that magazine, and still now, 2020, many years later, Sports Spectrum's magazine is still a huge part of our ministry. And this magazine is not your typical sports magazine. Like other publications, you'll find great stories and photos and interviews of some of the top athletes around the world. But you'll also read, just like you get to hear here on the show, you'll also read about how faith plays a role in these athletes' lives. They don't live to be defined by their sport. They live to be defined by God. Now, we publish 4 times a year with occasional special issues for certain events, a couple bonus issues. But the Sports Spectrum magazine is where sports and faith connect, and it's perfect for the sports fan who loves Jesus. But it's also perfect for the sports fan who's curious about Jesus, and it's really great for the sports fan who has yet to discover Jesus. In each issue, you can expect intriguing stories of athletes living out their faith, a look at what's happening in the world of sports in general, and devotionals from the athletes themselves. And the really neat thing about the magazine is at the back of every magazine is a gospel message detailing how readers can accept Christ into their lives and clearly explaining what the gospel of Jesus is all about. The content is suitable for all ages, and we'd love to have you subscribe and become a part of the Sports Spectrum family. Here's how you can do it. Simply go to sportspectrum.com. That's the website, sportspectrum.com, or give us a call, toll free, 866-821-2971. 866-821-2971. And order the Sports Spectrum magazine today. Now back to our conversation with Katie Engleson here on Sports Spectrum. Katie Engleson is our guest here on Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith. So let's intersect the conversation with faith and your journey with Christ. Share with us your testimony. Share with us how you kind of came to know the Lord and what that journey has been like, that journey of faith.
Sure. So I grew up in a very religious household. My mom and dad are Christians. My mom's Catholic. My dad's Lutheran. But my sister and I, we were raised Catholic. So honestly, I really didn't know any different. My parents set such a great example for us, leading by faith and really just living it out. And so, I feel really fortunate to have grown up in a very strong Christian home. And I went to Catholic middle school, Catholic high school. And then when I went to college, you're faced with so many different challenges. And I think that for me was a turning point in terms of just strengthening my faith. And a lot has to do with it, with the roommates that I had. Met some great girls through my sorority. And so from sophomore until my senior year, I lived with 4 other girls, and they're all from Birmingham. And they went to a church called Church of the Highlands.
Yes.
So I went with them because I'd be going to Catholic church. I went with them, and I fell in love with the church. I fell in love with just everything about it. And I felt like it was a message that I could really apply to my life. And I still go to Catholic church, but this for me was something that was much deeper. I just feel like my connection with God was strengthened because of that. And also watching my friends and how they lived out their lives, and, how they worshiped, it was truly inspiring. And so for me, that was really, I feel like a turning point in terms of strengthening my relationship with God.
I grew up Catholic as well, and went to church and went to sort of Catholic. I made my first communion and made my confirmation and all that, but there was something missing. And this is not, regards to the Catholic Church. It was just for me, there was something missing as far as a deep-seated relationship with the Lord. Is that kind of what happened with you? Is this relationship, that's a word, it's sort of a buzzword in the Christian world.
Yeah.
But is that what happened where this became more real as opposed to just sort of a ritual on Sunday morning, that you were deepening a relationship with God?
100%. And I think, it's one thing to be going through Mass and saying the prayers, but to actually live it out is a different thing. Yes. And I don't know, every message is just, I feel like applies to my life and applies to everyone in so many ways. And so, 100%, my relationship has changed because of that. And like I said, I still go to Catholic church,
Sure.
But that relationship, like you said, is a buzzword because it really is, it's a lot different. And I feel like I'm a lot more in touch with God and a lot closer with him in so many ways because of that.
On your Twitter page, it's at Katie Engleson. You list 1 Peter 4:10, and I'm not going to make you have to recite it if you don't have it memorized. So I happen to have a Bible in front of me. So I'm going to read the verse, and then I'm going to ask you what that verse means to you, why that's such an important one. It says, "As each one has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God." So share with us, why 1 Peter 4:10? Why is that so important that you shared it on your Twitter page?
Sure. Well, essentially what it means is, is to go out and use your gifts to serve and help others. And from a young age, my family, my parents taught us, they've instilled in us like a culture of giving back almost. And so, sorry, a culture of giving back. And so with that being said, I think it's so important to use what we have to serve others, just as Jesus did. volunteering is something very important to me. As I mentioned, in high school, middle school, even elementary school, there were different volunteer events that I would be a part of. And then in college, I was very involved. And then even now I'm very involved still, because for me, I find so much joy in helping others. And it's not necessarily knowing that I'm helping them, but just the impact that they and those people have on me. That means the world to me. And so, yes, that verse is very near and dear to my heart for so many reasons. But I absolutely love using my own gifts to share with others and to help.
We hear a lot, Katie, about athletes, especially on this show on Sports Spectrum. We talk to a lot of athletes about identity and their desire to have their identity not be in their work or what they do, but in Jesus and in our faith in God. How do you work through that in your life, keeping your identity focused on God and not your job or even your volunteer work, which is all great work. But if our identity is found in what we do, I think we miss what the whole point of Christianity is. So how do you stay grounded and keep that in that identity focused on God as opposed to your job or anything else that you do?
Yeah, well, my identity is found in Christ. And it's so hard, especially with a job like this, because I truly am every single day doing something for work. And so it's hard to kind of separate that. But at the same time, this job is so unpredictable in so many aspects. And with that, it takes a toll in different situations, friendships, relationships, life itself. And so I think for me, just knowing that God has a plan, I don't know what that may look like, but just that's given me a sense of peace because my identity is found in Christ, and He is the one who, He's the one that matters. And it is hard at times, being so focused on work and, there's holidays like Christmas. When I was working for the ABC affiliate in Waco, I never spent a Christmas with my family at home. I was so focused on work, and obviously I didn't have a lot of time off in that stage. But it's difficult. But at the end of the day, I know that my identity is found in God and it's found in Jesus, and that's what matters.
It's really good stuff there, Katie Engleson. You mentioned as we were talking, actually texting, I should say, before the interview, you mentioned about the organization called Best Buddies, and I know that you volunteer and
Yes.
you work through that. What is that? I know you're the president of that. I believe it was president of Best Buddies is what you texted me, but I love what that is about and what that stands for. Can you share what Best Buddies is?
Sure. So I'm the president of our junior advisory board here in Dallas, and Best Buddies is an international organization that's mission really is to develop one-on-one friendships between those with and without intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I got involved with Best Buddies in my freshman year of college, and I just went to an event and volunteered. And then my sophomore year, I landed a position on our executive council. And I did that from my sophomore, junior, and my senior year. Even represented our chapter at our the leadership conference. But the mission is just to promote inclusion, and that's something so important to me.
Sure.
For a variety of reasons. But it's just an incredible organization, and it's kind of the sister organization to Special Olympics, which is a similar philanthropy, so to speak, promoting sports between those with and without intellectual disabilities. The mission there is play unified. And so I wanted to continue working with Best Buddies post college. And when I was in Waco, I got in touch with an organization that was kind of similar, but it wasn't Best Buddies. And then now that I'm in Dallas, we do have a state office located here, and there's one in Houston. And so, I joined the junior advisory board, and I love it. And we're very, we help plan different events. We do different fundraisers and things like that. But yes, Best Buddies is an organization that is very important to me.
Tell me about why it's so important for us as believers, as followers of Christ, to serve and to give back.
Sure. Well, I think we have all these gifts, right? And so it's so important to use those to help others. I mean, honestly, it's a part of like my daily routine. It's so important to me. I can't imagine having a life where I didn't serve or didn't help, didn't donate my time. It's just something that I've grown up doing. My parents, as I mentioned, instilled that in my sister and I at a very young age. And so, it's just so important. And the message of Best Buddies, as I mentioned, is inclusion. And, we're all different, but we're all so alike in so many different ways. And it's so important to get to know people for who they are. For me, I love serving others.
That's awesome. I mean, when you look at the example of Christ, he says, I came to serve, not to be served. And you're talking about the Son of God. You're talking about the guy who literally could come to this earth and say, okay, all y'all serve me because he's Jesus. And yet this is the Savior of the world coming to this earth and talking in the Gospels about serving others. That's why he came to this earth. So if we're trying to model him, then I think we have to be great in our desires to serve and to help others. So love your heart there, Katie. Let's end this conversation on the question that we ask all of our guests. And if you listen to this show, you know where I'm going here. What is the Lord teaching you right now, Katie Engleson? What are you learning from God where he has you right now in the season of life you're in?
Yeah, I think with this job, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there's so much uncertainty just in terms of where you're going to be, the sacrifices that you personally have to make when it comes to a variety of different things. But it's taught me to just trust in his plan and know that he has this incredible, incredible plan. And as long as I'm trusting, then he is faithful, and he always has been. Yes, there's going to be times where things are really tough, but in the end, he always provides. And it's really cool to always see that come to fruition.
She is Katie Engleson, Fox Sports Southwest reporter. You can give her a follow over on Twitter at Katie Engleson. We'll be keeping an eye out and just wishing you nothing but the best, Katie. Thanks for joining us here on Sports Spectrum. I'm sure you got a great career ahead of you, and praying nothing but the best for you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jason. Really appreciate it.
And many thanks to Katie Engleson for joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Give her a follow over on Twitter at Katie, Katie, Engleson, Engleson. She's got a great story, and we're glad that she shared it here with us at Sports Spectrum. Going to be fun to watch her journey in the broadcasting world and see how God uses her to continue to do great work as a sports reporter. You can find her work at Fox Sports Southwest. And like I said, give her a follow over on Twitter at Katie Engleson. Many thanks to Katie, and many thanks to you for listening. You can give us a follow over on our social media pages as well. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and of course Facebook as well. Just search at sports_spectrum. Search sports_spectrum, and you will find us there. Maybe you like what you heard. Give us a follow. Maybe DM us. Whatever it is, share, like, retweet, all that good stuff. But let us know that you heard this story of Katie Engleson on Sports Spectrum. And then, of course, all of our content can be found at sportspectrum.com. Lots of great articles there. Our podcast, which you can listen to in addition to the show, is available everywhere. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, all on demand and all available for you to listen to at any time you'd like. If you'd like to reach us here at Sports Spectrum, our address is 640 Plaza Drive, suite number 110, Highlands Ranch, Colorado, 80129. And you can give us a call toll-free, 866-821-2971. Sports Spectrum's radio show is paid for by Professional Athletes Outreach. My name is Jason Romano. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. Have a great rest of your day.